Today, I'll be discussing discrimination and racism and bringing in some spiritual perspectives on why the personality decides to see itself as superior to another human simply because of another person's beliefs, the color of their skin, or something that the personality decides is different or threatening in another human being. Part of awakening is the realization that the self is interconnected with every single being, physical and non-physical. We are everything that we see. Everything within us is connected to everything outside of us. And at first, the realization might be just subtle. We might notice that we feel good when we're helping somebody else, or when we're stroking a pet, or when we're holding a baby in our arms. We feel an expansion, a heart opening, an interconnection, and that's just a very base, subtle level of unity consciousness. Because when we see the beauty in something outside of ourselves, when we connect to something outside of ourselves, we're actually connecting to ourself, because there's nothing but the self. So it's an unrefined state of unity, which we can just experience in everyday life, providing our empathy is intact. Some people who've been harmed early on in life, their empathy is repressed, and so sometimes there can be performative empathy because of that repression. That does awaken completely and dissolve, especially when the body is dropped, and we have compassion for those people who can't connect to genuine empathy while they're in the body. And there's a spectrum of empathy. There's a spectrum of connecting to another, of perceiving that it's the same, but on a deep level, the same. On a more surface level, superficial differences. So this can be felt if you transcend in a group, if you meditate in a group. You might have differences with the people that you're meditating with. You might have differences in opinion with politics. You might have differences in opinion on how to bring up children. You might have differences in opinion on vegetarian, meat eating, everything to do with the world and how to fix it. But when you meditate and everybody moves beyond the relative world, connects on a deeper level in the group meditation, those differences dissolve completely. They don't exist, because we're returning back to a oneness, a connection with everything. There's only a thread of the personality that remains, that maybe during the meditation totally dissolves, and we don't even know we're human at that point. That can happen in very deep meditations because we're not human. At a deep level, that knowledge exists that we're not even human, and you're like, I don't know, what do you mean we're not even human? How can you say that? You sound mad. The idea of being human and the experience of being human exists on one level, but if you go deeper beneath that level, you're not a human. You're just pure awareness. And so the idea of racism or discrimination just seems so far away. It's like an alien concept because it's such a surface level concept that you might not like, or the personality might not like somebody because of how much melatonin they have in their skin, or how much money they have in the bank account, or whether they speak a different language or live in a different place. I mean, it's absurd, but that's what the personality does. That's what ignorance does. It creates a false sense of separation. The idea that there's something other than yourself is an illusion, is ignorance. It's something that happens when we take a physical body in order to have an experience of being Jenny, Jim, Muhammad, whatever you've come into the universe to experience. You have to have this illusion of being something different, something other than the other perceived body that's walking around. But it's just a trick that the mind plays so that you can have that experience, but you can get out of that trick. In deep meditation, you get out of that trick. And if you regularly meditate and you go in to the stillness and out into activity, into the stillness and out into activity, into the stillness and out into the activity, the knowingness of unity and connection with everything starts to infuse the activity, starts to infuse your everyday life. So you're meditating while you're in activity. You never lose that meditative knowingness of interconnectivity. And so when you interact with people, yes, they might have a different shaped body, different colored skin, speak a different language, but that's just a very superficial film. And you see beyond the film, beyond the storyline, beyond the illusion. And that's very heartwarming, because you're able to connect with people on a deeper level. So even when you interact with them and they can be going through a hard time, and you know, the personality of the person might have made some decisions which were bad in your personality's opinion. So you have these two personalities judging, but you can even witness that happening. It's like, oh, my personality is judging their personality, and my personality wants to think that it's more superior than that other person's personality. And you just kind of, at some point, just get sick of yourself, your false self. And so that can happen. This witnessing of the absurdity of the dialogue in your head that sometimes you may like buy into, and then you wake up out of it, and then you might fall back into it, and then you wake up out of it, and you might fall back into it, and there can be a fluctuation, but over time you eventually just get sick of it, and then you connect from a deeper level with people. And it's sad on one level to see the ignorance in the world, to see the delusion in the personalities. But if you zoom out, we're just this flicker in time, and everybody drops their body and everybody dies, and the ignorance will be dissolved in that moment. For some people, they get to dissolve the ignorance while they're in the body. Whoopee-doo for them. Doesn't have to happen. You don't have to judge people who are attached to their personality structures and their likes and their dislikes and the people they prefer and the people they think they're better than. It doesn't really matter. at the end of the day, we're all dust. At the end of the day, nobody escapes. It doesn't matter how prejudiced they are, they're going to come to a point where they drop their body, and they're going to come to a point where they realize the truth of who they are. And you don't need to force people to realize that truth while they're in their bodies. The personality and the energy behind the personality can just keep going. Sometimes it kind of wears itself out, and then we get some form of awakening, and that's beautiful to see. It can sometimes be destabilizing for people because they don't know who they are anymore, and that's when it's helpful to have a guru or a teacher who's been through that process, who can say nothing bad is happening. Don't worry, you're not losing your mind. You exist without having a personality. Some people have an awareness of their personality and just make fun of it almost, or just witness it or allow it to just do its thing. Because even after an awakening, the personality still exists, and there's still faint levels of ignorance because we're in a body and there is a personality structure. And there may be some laser vidya, some faint remains of ignorance. There has to be, in order to really just have a body and exist. And so you don't need to destroy your ego and force yourself to wake up. You can't do that. It's a natural process. There's a cosmic intelligence in charge. We don't know why it bursts somebody's bubble and it doesn't burst another person's bubble. I see that happening. You know, I have clients and they're like doopy 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 doop. And then sometimes they will have a big awakening and they don't know what's happening to them. And they may not be perceived as special people by other personality types. It's like just Joe Blogs. Why is Joe Blogs having this big realization, whereas somebody else isn't? And there is a cosmic intelligence that's in charge of that, and it wakes certain people up. It moves through the kingdom, this cosmic intelligence, and it just almost just goes, that person's time is up, that person's time is up, that person's time is up. And if your time is up, your time is up. And then your life will not be your own anymore. So the personality feels like it's in charge at a certain point and it's making choices. But when you have an awakening, the personality is no longer in charge of your life. It's like a cosmic intelligence moves through you and takes over your life. And it's unfathomable. And it's really interesting. And so, for those of you who might have some faint remains of ignorance, some dislike for a particular group of people or a preference for another skin type, just notice the inner dialogue. Notice the personality and what it's saying. It'll have a script. Maybe there'll be fear involved. A lot of the time we're afraid of what we don't know. Write it down. Know that the thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are never facts. They're usually just vomit from the personality. And just try and witness it from a third person perspective. Oh, isn't it interesting? I the I that is witnessing what's written on the page, that has no investment in which whatever's written on the page is who I really am. There's a part of you that doesn't care about the color of somebody else's skin. There's a part of you that doesn't care about how much money another person has in their bank account. There's a part of you that doesn't care about where that person lives or what that person's done or how helpful or unhelpful that person is. There's a part of you that's not threatened by that other person. That part of you is 99.9% of who you truly are. That tiny thread that's left is just ignorance. The largest part of you always wins in the end. When you drop your body, that's where you're going. That thread of ignorance that thinks that you're better than that other person, or that's afraid of that other person, or disgusted by that other person, that thread just dissolves. Whoosh! It's ignorance. It prevents you fully experiencing the truth of life, the joy of your big self, your capacity to expand, to heal, to see clearly, to experience love. Because love, that unconditional, massive, blissful love, exists in a different space to where the ignorance exists. And I really pray for people to experience the fullness of life, because when there's discrimination, there's not fullness of life. When there's discrimination, you walk around in fear and judgment, in superiority, in an illusion. It's not, you're not seeing life clearly, and you also feel alone because you're missing out on feeling connected when you walk around in the kingdom to your fellow human beings. That's a lonely, sad place to be. And so I do pray that people get an experience of blissful interconnection with all beings while they're in the body, and they don't have to wait. I don't think we need to wait. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we didn't need to wait? If we could experience love for everybody now? So I'm going to hold space for that. And lots of love to you all.